welcome to today's Northwest Passages live stream. This is the community forum part of the Spokesman-Review's newspaper book club happening here. Today, we're talking about music. Listening to music, creating music. It has been said that music makes us human. One of my favorite musical artists, Matt Nathanson, has a t-shirt. It says, music is better than people. While this conversation needs to happen about music during the pandemic, so we will. I am so pleased to introduce Spokesman-Review reporter Rebecca White, who will lead today's conversation. Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm here talking to EWU professor Jody Graves. And so I first met Jody when she was inducted into the Steinway Hall of Fame. And, she's been doing a lot of music and community events, both, really high level things, but also, going to the food bank and playing there. So I'll also let you, Jody, introduce yourself and maybe tell people also what's important to you. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's so nice to be with you this morning and talk about this wonderful topic, which of course is near and dear to my heart and my life. I'm honored to be a member of the Eastern Washington University faculty, and I direct the piano program there, among other things. And so, as you said, and as Christy said, it's, music is about our humanness. And I am very, very passionate about working with people and talking to people from the stage and in other kinds of venues about how music is a center point of our culture. It's not an extracurricular activity, which in some places is, some people think of it that way, but and that's a good thing too, because it should be done, enjoyed by everybody. But I'm really passionate about how it infuses who we are as human beings. And in this particular time, we are seeing some pretty amazing expressions, shall we say, of music. Certainly, of course, on the internet or even on television shows and things like that.
Okay. Well, like one thing, I guess, while we have a chance and while we start out, do you want to just, show us one small thing that you can do on the piano while we're starting out doing this?
I am sitting by the piano here. Is that what you were asking for?
Yeah, that's a great way to start us out. Just
A little bit of sound. We're talking about music. We should play and start with music and or
just a
sing.
little bit.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing I wanted to start out with is, you're a music teacher, but also, an artist yourself. How have you managed through teaching? And also, I know that you're used to live performances, and I think you had some scheduled this spring. Have you managed through all of that?
It was really interesting the night that I was working with the Spokane Jazz Orchestra. We were getting ready to perform that Saturday, and I was in dress rehearsal, getting ready to play Rhapsody in Blue and some other things with them, which is an exciting concert we hope to reconstitute at some point. And the word came that night that we were shutting down. I had kind of expected it, but then you're kind of thinking, well, what does that mean? And it's not just affecting me, it affects every single person on our planet. So I'm just a part of that. But in my particular field, we, like many things that people do, we do this together. So then what's that going to look like? So it required a whole lot of creative thinking and collaborating with people to figure out how do we maintain teaching and producing music online. And we've seen so many great things, even from the very beginning, where people, for example, in Italy, were on their balconies singing to each other. And people here have, done the drive-bys and then sing happy birthday to grandma from the street. I mean, it's so fascinating to me that it's it's something that's deep inside, whether you are a professional or not. And I choose to call myself an amateur because an amateur literally means lover of. So yes, I'm a professional, but I like the word amateur. You know, it's the music and dance and poetry and storytelling has all been part of our human culture since the beginning of time. You know, around the campfire and those kinds of things. What I have been struck with is how busy we all were with our respective lives, and certainly in my world, because we are sort of this, in a way, our culture pushes us to be human doings instead of human beings and celebrating that. And this has really called us to be in our sort of beingness, and I think called us to be as creative as possible and figure out, well, what do I now do to maintain my health, my well-being, my energy? And music sort of allows that emotion and memory to spill over into those hardened edges, you know? Then you're feeling down and you put on some favorite music in the car or in the kitchen, and all of a sudden you feel different. That's true as well as the next level, which is when you're engaged in it. When you get together, you sing in the church choir, or you play your ukulele, or you enjoy your friends with the guitar and the music around a campfire, or you're out on a stage getting ready to play with the chamber music you've been studying. So it's astonishing what we've seen. And look at the fundraising that's gone on with professional musicians doing those concerts to raise money to help people during this time. Not a lot of other professions are able to affect that kind of outpouring, shall we say, because it touches our soul. It transforms us. There's an alchemy involved here.
So how has music, still, keeping performing or maybe connecting with others, how has that helped you kind of in this time of isolation where, you can't be together as a choir or an orchestra or symphony as you once were?
Well, number one, it's made me be, realize how incredibly blessed I am in my life to do what I'm doing. And it's, in terms of how has it made me feel, it's certainly frustrating at times, but for the most part, I stay with how can I support my students? How can I keep them engaged and keep them excited, even when, like, the sound isn't always great across Zoom, depends on what students have at on their end. But I'm finding there's a different intimacy that's happening as we especially share music. And students are getting creative, they're writing songs, they're learning different pieces they wouldn't have done otherwise, and I am so honored to be a part of that. And we really celebrate that at Eastern, especially because we're such a great environment for this, not just one-on-one, but really supporting students' ideas. And that's been a real piece of what's going on in this time of isolation. I thought at first that I would see students drop off or that they would get frustrated and not continue. I haven't had one do that. They're engaged. We're meeting every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more. We even have a music performance class that's connected with our sister university in South America. So they're joining with our students. We wouldn't have done that before. So pretty cool.
Okay. Is, keeping performing music and, keeping connected, has that really helped with sort of the stress and the anxiety of like living through a pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. There's so many studies that, I mean, everybody pretty well knows this, but psychologists and therapists, they often prescribe music as a therapeutic tool for people who are suffering with anxiety and depression. And if you look on any website right now, that's one of the things that almost unanimously is being included in those quote unquote prescriptions, because there is this vibration that happens. You hear a song and all of a sudden you're overcome with emotion, And sometimes you don't even know why, but there's deeper memory that resonates even in our physiology that affects our immune system and in a positive way. That's so important right now as we're in isolation, because music makes us feel connected to something that matters, something that ties us together, you know, in our sort of, in a way, collected experience that we're having. I mean, there are doctors even doing studies now on the influence in the recent decades on the impact of music and sound on cancer cells, on the effects of that. It's you know, it strengthens the ties among everyone. And I have traveled the world and been in so many places. I don't speak the language, but playing and interacting with people playing music has every single time brought us together, and especially in places like the Middle East where I've been many times, where you would think, well, there's all this political stuff going on. All of that goes away because it transcends those divisions. It transcends. If we remember on 9/11, the day that it happened, Congress got on the steps of the Capitol to have a moment of silence, and then they broke into singing together, God Bless America, because they didn't know what else to do in that tragic moment. So it's in us. It's part of our humanness. That's why it's at the center point, you see. I could go on. I don't want to. You may have another question here, but I'm going to keep going if you don't ask. So
Yeah, I was just going to ask, kind of, elaborate. If I was somebody who is really maybe stressed or anxious or having some troubles during this pandemic, and is music something that could make me feel better, either playing or listening to different types or going to a performer's live stream? Maybe what would you recommend doing if I'm struggling and looking for something that will sort of just give me a little bit of a sense of peace during this?
well, there are a lot of things to do. Absolutely, you can go online. There are so many great concerts that people are putting together, or rebroadcasting in some cases. You know, everything from Global Citizen concert to that had everybody involved in it, and the Met Gala concerts and all of these different things. So people have access to that immediately, for sure. But you know what's interesting? So many, I don't know that there's ever a time where I talk to people and they say, what do you do? And I say, I'm a musician. Here's the response. Oh, I used to play the piano, or I always wanted to play guitar. I really wish I could play the violin. This is a great time where two things will happen. You can pick up an instrument you always wanted to play, and you have access to teachers all over the internet. You could even study with somebody in a different country if you wanted to. And there are tutorials people are producing. So that's a wonderful way. Pick up something that you think, oh, I'm 65. I don't think I could learn an instrument. Yes, you can. And so I would suggest that's a big one. You see, because listening to music certainly brings a sort of calmness. There's a peacefulness, or there's joy, and there's a kind of an ignition of energy sometimes through certain pieces, dancing around the kitchen with them or whatever. But when you're participating in music, when you are part of something, making music together actually boosts the endorphins. And boy, do we need that. And that helps your immune system. So do we need a prescription? We know we need the serious prescriptions and the vaccines and all of that. We know that. They're working on that. And by the way, many of those scientists, and some are my former students working in epidemiology, have dual degrees in music and science, or pre-med, engineering, innovation, all of those kinds of things. Very fascinating. If you go to the Mayo Clinic, they have their own orchestra and choir that the doctors and nurses are part of, because so many of them play and sing, because they believe that, see. So as far as that goes, participating in music, learning an instrument, connecting with somebody in your area that can help you out, everybody's got access to that right now. And I will say, if there's anybody listening and they're like, well, I want to do this, but I don't have an instrument, well, I'm going to challenge my Eastern Washington University students for a minute and say, you know what, here's an outreach project we could work on. So if people are listening, they want to check in, contact me, and we'll see what we can do about, let's get some instruments out there to people who might think that would help them.
Of just having something to play to, get your mind on something and producing something. And
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
because that was one thing I was planning to ask you about. I know you talked in the past about, music is a right, not a privilege. And so, I think that that's probably important, right now as well, because I feel like maybe attending live music might be, or seeing it in person, a chance is a right, not a privilege, and also playing it. So how does that kind of work into, what's happening right now?
Well, we're limited because we have to stay with the mandates of what the government wants us to do or not do as far as gathering for things. So gathering for big musical events is probably a little ways down the road here, but supporting those people who are involved in it. In our particular area, we have the Spokane Symphony and the Spokane Symphony Chorale, the Spokane Jazz Orchestra, Inland Northwest Opera. We have all of the jazz groups that play in all those clubs. We have all these great things going on, not to mention all of the music theater programs and those aspects of things. So connecting with those groups, if you want to be part of them, or if you are thinking about that, and seeing, well, what can I be working on now while I'm in quarantine? Maybe there's a way to connect and see there's possibility in the future for that, but you can be preparing now for some of those future things. We have to look past this because we will get past it. We will. We absolutely will. And we have a story to tell. What's our story going to be? I was, huddled in my little space and I didn't know what to do, or I reached out and connected, and here's how I got through. And I learned an instrument, or I learned, monologues from plays that I want to be part of in the future, whatever that might be.
So there's definitely still ways that you can be creative or just, connect with that part of you during this time, and that could maybe help you.
Yes, Rebecca, more than ever. This is, the thing about creativity is that music and the arts, especially, sort of fire it up. And what's interesting is so many times people say, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or "I can't do that." Da, da, da. Why not? See, it's not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about honoring your humanness. When you go to for example, like, weddings, let's say. Go to a wedding and you hear the right? And people, it's funny, but it's one of those pieces where everybody gets goosebumps, and excited about it. Well, for the most part anyway. Let's hope they do. And so it elicits this response that when we're isolated, listening to music can even spark something beyond just the musical world. So you listen to a piece of music that you like, or something that pops onto the radio or whatever, and you happen to be, let's say, somebody who's going to go into engineering or something, and all of a sudden some idea pops into your head because it fires that part of the brain. See? And it's so critically important that it's constantly integrated and included in any kind of educational system across the board, from birth all the way to senior citizens. So it's very, very, very important, I think.
And something I also wanted to ask you, I know when you were younger, you went through some difficult times and were really committed to music and pursuing it. What was a time that maybe, has music ever really helped you get through some times that you were struggling in the past?
Oh, yeah. Oh, without question. Without question. Remember, I was thinking about, I would sit down in difficult times, and it would sometimes it'd be with the guitar, and sometimes it would be with the piano or whatever it was, depending on where I was in my age. But going to the piano, that just always made the world seem right to me. And so I began to just, when I was in some of those more challenging times, those times when I felt alone and isolated and anxious, you know, and the things that many people are experiencing right now, that I would just and what I was doing there was what I would do when I was, you know, stressed or anxious, was I would just make sound. I wasn't necessarily looking at a specific piece of music. I was just creating sound, playing around, as we say in the biz is. And I think it's super important. Grab a guitar and start figuring out how to play those chords, or pick up your grandma's violin that's up in the attic and go, well, what do I do with this? And see what happens. Because more than ever, we have a chance right now, individually and collectively, to create the story going forward, to be, you know, healthy and in a good sense of mind. And if we have people around us who are struggling, we help them, you know, invite them to be part of that. This is the chance, and music can be that vehicle.
Because part of it, I remember you told me you know, grew up, you know, partially in foster care and went through some difficult times that you kind of felt alone. And I feel like a lot of people feel really alone right now. It's so, you know, talking about things that maybe helped you, you know, get through that time could maybe help other people when they're, you know, by themselves for the first time for maybe a long time.
Oh yeah, there is no question. And check in with these inspiring things that are being produced by young people, by students who are up and coming. Because think about it, all of these things we do, you know, funerals, weddings, celebrations, birthdays, hospice care, music. There's music for the, you know, for people in memory care. You know, the musical memory is the last thing to go with someone who's struggling with memory issues in their later years. And so people who don't even talk can sing in those moments. You see, listen, watch a movie, watch a TV show. Take the music out. What do you got? It's everywhere. That's what's so great about what we're doing at Eastern, because we're training those people for all of those things, and keeping our see music is it's universal, and everybody can do it. Everybody can sing. I know people say, oh, I can't sing, I can't. Yes, you can. If you can talk, you can sing. And so you know, get onto a Zoom thing with your friend and sing to each other, you know, or play guitar and go back and forth. I know the sound is a little challenging, but boy, people are getting creative with how they're doing that. So I really want to encourage anybody who's hurting and aching that this is one of the best prescriptions that you can offer. Oh, I love it. Rebecca, you've got a cat with you today. I love it.
It wants to be part of the interview, but yeah, well,
Absolutely. That's right.
I think on a final note, I guess, just to kind of go through, because I think one of the you know, important things to pull away from this conversation is, you know, there are maybe ways to relieve some of that stress and anxiety. And so, what would you say, you know, your biggest takeaway from this conversation, and, you know, maybe exploring music from this pandemic is, I guess, what would be the biggest thing that you recommend for people to explore and to be thinking about during this time when it comes to music?
You know what I think I would like to share is a couple of little things, and then read you a little thing that I have written for musicians everywhere. But what I do believe to be very true is, when we come together and we make music, and even if we're doing it in our isolated places, knowing that in the future we're going to get together and hang, or maybe right now if we go into phase 2, We get together with people in our socially distant appropriate things outside. Somebody's got a guitar. Let's get together and sing. Let's or bring the ukulele or whatever else you've got laying around, and make that a part of those socially distant gatherings, because that's an easy thing to do, and be very safe and smart about that. What I do believe is if every person who is in a position of leadership or governance or any kind of position like that, if they were required every week to come together and play and sing music and not talk to each other, that we would have a different world. So let me just close by sharing with you this little note that I wrote to my students, and to see if this answers a little bit of your question here. We, the musicians, are the keepers of the gate into the world of music, and we have a mission to pass this on to everyone. Today, more than ever, people are looking to us for beauty and peace, and to make sense out of a world that's changing and confusing. To understand that what we do as musicians and artists at any age is a vital part of our society and our culture. It articulates our human condition at the deepest level, when words fail to express this human cry that I am, and see me and hear me, and I matter. Every time we play or sing a note of music from anybody, we're adding something glorious to a world that's hungry for those gifts of creativity. It's a celebration of the human being rather than the human doing. It's about the process of awakening the artist within, which becomes the fertile ground for a beautiful life.
Well, thank you so much, Jody, for joining us and answering all of my questions. Some of them I probably asked multiple times, but thank you so much for being here and joining us.
Thanks, Rebecca. I always enjoy talking with you. Have a fabulous day, my dear.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Dr. Graves and Rebecca. I love that Northwest Passages could be kind of part of this mission that you have. I'm taking away from this, it's not about perfection, it's about presence. As a non-musician myself, or no, I can't say that, but yes, it's about being present, and I love that.
That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you for meeting with us virtually. Next week, we will be back with different conversations, one on loneliness, a discussion with Mayor Woodward, and this phase 2 thing that's happening, plus a beauty panel as salons get back open. We post all of these videos for free on our site. There's no ticket cost to attend one of these virtual forums. We love that. Instead of a set ticket price, perhaps consider making a contribution to the Community Journalism and Civic Engagement Fund via the Inovia Foundation of any amount, whatever you can afford, as we adapt to new ways of doing business and bringing you the facts and information that matter, like music. The Spokesman-Review and Northwest Passages appreciates your support. Thank you very much.